Let's head over to the Pinstripe Bowl. Speaking of bowl games in the Northeast, Nebraska squares off with Boston College, and I like this matchup because I think there is a lot of experience on both lines of scrimmage for both teams. All right. I think both these teams know what the other team is trying to do, right? You have some key pieces missing, though, right? On both sides, particularly on the defensive line, right? You look at Ezraku. Gosh, I don't know how to pronounce that. Eziraku. I'm not even going to try, but he is a monster, okay? Like, I don't have to tell you Boston College fans that he's a monster because you know that he's just physically your best player, and it's not even close. Grayson James coming in at quarterback late in the season, and honestly, I thought he was better than like what I thought he was going to be. Like at FIU, he was not very impressive, right? And I didn't think that was a great get. I thought that was kind of an emergency get for Boston College, and I do think that Bill O'Brien coming in there in that offense, like his offenses are more fit for pocket passing, pro style. Like he Grayson James fits him more than Tommy Castellanos fits, right? I do think Castellanos is probably like a better
quarterback. Like you
can
saw it in the portal. Like he ended up at FSU right away. Like FSU, a team with some resources and need at the quarterback position, was like, yeah, we want that guy because he's a good quarterback. But also like system matters, like you're talking about here. Like it is a big deal.
yeah. And Dylan Lonergan, by the way,
That'll be fun.
I think that's a great get.
Not long ago, there were some Bama fans that were really really excited about what he can do and what he showed out his first spring. I think in
I think Bill
Tuscaloosa.
O'Brien can do a lot with him, but we're not here to talk about that, right? We're here to talk about how is this Nebraska Boston College game going to go. Okay, we're going to pick this game at 3.5. Okay, Nebraska's favored by 3.5 here. And I think that's important because I do think that this is going to be a close game, right? I don't have a strong lean one way or another. Like when we talk about bowl games and picking a slate of bowl games, there are games in here that you just have a tough time picking, right? And I'll let you talk about some of these opt outs more, right? And some of these opt outs, I think, greatly impacted this game. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not only at the player position we talked about with Azuraku. I'm so sorry, guys. He's fantastic. But you also are missing some coaches for Nebraska,
Yeah.
right? So you got some change at the offensive side of the ball, right? So Dana Holgerson, who's been the OC kind of the past couple weeks, he gets the full-time OC job. Good for him. Happy for him and Raiola. On the defense side of the ball, you're going through a lot of changes, right? So Tony White, very good defensive coordinators having FSU. He's bringing alongside a very good defensive line coach, Terrence Knighton, right? One of the fan favorites there in Nebraska, who did wonders recruiting, developing all that stuff there for Nebraska. The DB coach, John Butler, will be the defensive coordinator calling the plays, right, for the bowl game. So that's something just to keep an eye out for because you're going to have to be prepared. Bill O'Brien in a spot here. All of a sudden, I look to Boston College, and I feel like there's a coaching edge there with what he can do scheme up defense or offensively for Boston College. You've also got players in that front seven that are opting out or transferring, right? You got the linebacker, Gabayer. You've got Jamari Butler on the D line,
Who's
as
good.
well as Stephon going to LSU. You got Stephon Thompson, who's following, right? Tony White and John Butler. I think he's been with Tony White for a couple times now. He's over with him at Syracuse, heading over to Florida State there. You got Princewell Uman Mielen, right, meeting up with his brother. I guess kind of not really going to be overlap, but a very talented edge rusher there. You got James Williams, another edge rusher there. You've got a lot of guys that played some snaps and can do some damage for you. And then on the offense side of the ball, right, you got a couple starting tight end, right? I know you know about him going to A&M. Is it Borkercher?
Yeah, Nate Borkature. I mean, like, good football player. Like, Fedoni, honestly, and I don't know how Nebraska fans feel about this, but, I mean, I could be wrong. I was not impressed with him leading up into this year, and I thought he played better, right? And even, like, down the stretch, like, I feel like they were able to use. Now they put Fedoni in the slot all the time, right? And Borkshire is definitely your inline tight end guy, but you have depth there, right? Like, so I'm not worried about that one, right? I really not.
Yeah, and then you also have the running back, the tight end, Dante Dowell, who I think is a very good football player. What I think was their best running back for Nebraska this year. And you're going up against a stingy run defense, albeit without the best defensive lineman, right? But there was top 20 run defense, right, in the ACC there for Boston College. But also, you kind of switch your sides here, and you want to see some growth here. We've talked about it in some of these bowl games in the prep here. You get 15 practices to be able to use for these bowl games. If you're a young quarterback, such as Dylan Raiola, who's maybe hit a little bit of a freshman wall at some point in the Big Ten there, which is fine. It happens to everybody. Not surprised at all. He had a chance to kind of regather, regroup. You had 15, couple weeks off. You had 15 practices to get things right here and maybe exploit that pretty unimpressive Boston College's pass defense, right? They're 111th in pass defense in the country. That is terrible. There's 34 teams that are counted in that. That's not where you want to be at all. And Nebraska, you've got some weapons there.
And you're losing 61 of your 185 pressures, by the way, from one player.
Yeah, which is freaking nuts. And you mentioned Fedoni, the tight end, what he can do, through the air, but you also got Banks, Nayer, guys like that Jalen Lloyd, is he, hopefully is he coming back? And it'd be able to be a little bit more of an explosive presence in your offense that you've kind of been missing. It'll be interesting to see here. I'll give you my pick before I hand it over to you here. I kind of tend to lean towards Nebraska right in this spot here. Again, another game. It's going to be in a weird environment. The weather won't be great. It's going to be in a baseball field. We know how those things hold up in December, right? Great idea from the NCAA there. To go to New York and Boston and play in a baseball field. But I tend to like Nebraska in this spot. Barely. Obviously, I would have loved it back when it was at 3, right? 3.5, or actually 2.5 to 3. But I guess I'll take the hook here, 3.5 for Nebraska to cover and obviously to win.
Yeah, I think I will too. And usually it's not necessarily because of one player for me, but Ezia Ruaku, hopefully that's how you say it, 61 pressures this year, 14 sacks. I mean, as a team, you had 27 sacks, 14 of them were from this particular player. I mean, and his pressure rate is nuts. He's probably your best run defender as well. If you want to dive into the tape on that one, like that's just so impactful for me. All right, and this Nebraska offensive line hasn't been amazing this year. I know Nebraska fans have their gripes about this, but there is the ability for these receivers to make plays, and they haven't done it. And I think Dylan Raiola is going to have enough time, right, without Ezra Waku just coming flying in there off that edge. And I don't know, man. I really think Nebraska can get Boston College through the air. And I don't know how Boston College's offensive line, which I think we can agree that Boston College's offensive line is vastly improved from the season before and the season before that. I just don't know that they're good enough necessarily to stop Nebraska's defensive line, even with some of these opt-outs, right? Even with Jamar Butler gone, Stephen Thompson, who, okay, he's all right. And Uman Yellen's like, all right, he's young, raw. But, yeah, I'll take Nebraska minus 3.5, and I'm not going to love it, by the way. Originally, when I was looking at this, my instinct was to take Boston College plus 3.5. But I just after further review, I think I'm laying it with Nebraska.
You also have the right tackle, right? Ozzie Trapilo missing too. And you still have some talent there on the Nebraska defensive line, right? You mentioned a couple of names there. Ty Robinson, 6 sacks there. Nash Hutmacher, right? The polar bear. He's still there to get after it. You got McGahee, right? You got Lenhart, some pretty Sherman, right? Former high recruit. Like, you've got some guys there to get it done. I also worry too, the Lewis Bond and Hare, are those guys enough to really get going for Boston College? Against Nebraska and Robichaud, right? Kyle Robichaud, who's very, very good, right? 165 carries, 700 plus yards, 10 touchdowns, right? But this is a really good Nebraska front seven, even without some of those guys there. 11th against the run this year. And plus, you don't get that extra added dimension that Castellanos gives you in that run game to add the numbers, to get the +1, all that kind of good stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on here. Yeah, like you don't feel great about it. But I do tend to lean Nebraska here.